127 miles, 10,000 feet of elevation gain, and for me, 7 hours in the saddle. I would say Belgian waffle ride is good, clean fun, but judging by the horrendous state and smell of my shoes that stepped in more than one mud puddle that was not just mud, I gotta say, it's not all clean fun here at BWR. It's a mix of a whole lot of things, and that's the secret sauce that Michael Marks sprinkles into his unroad events. In this video, I want to talk about the experience I had, what I saw out there on the roads and unroads. I want to talk about the Canyon Grail that I tested with its crazy double-decker bar, Forge+Bond wheels, tires, other bits and bobs, what worked for me, what failed for me, and some of the things that I really enjoyed about the event, especially the whole mix of one big mob. You know, we all start together, women, men, pros, the Janes and Joes, old guys, young folks, all in together, and the community vibe at the start and the finish, and then all the volunteers out there, just a good, crazy party.
I'm good, thank you very much. Well, hi.
First, you know what I'm gonna say, take a second and hit that subscribe button and enable notifications so you don't miss any of my videos. That helps me out. Now sit back and enjoy the BWR California ride. All right, let's start at the start. For starters, we are in San Diego County. You might be hearing the highway noise. We're just right here on the freeway. Emporia, the quiet town of Emporia, or the quiet town of Stillwater. San Diego is not. This is part of the fun of gravel races, the diversity in not just scenery and terrain, but locales. Start line had some big ballers there. The men's race was won by Russell Finsterwald. Ivar Slick was there at the start, the man who won Unbound Gravel last year. A positive addition recently to the race, a couple years ago, was adding a stiff climb at the start so we can all get in where we fit in. You know, one danger to so many of us all starting together is it's, you know, a mixed batch of skill sets in terms of handling and abilities. And that's not a problem until it is, like when you come into a technical section at high speed. So having a climb that sorts us out Hogwarts style by watts per kilo is a good thing. Before we even got to that climb, you know, there's a little bump just the first couple miles in. I found myself doing 600 watts for 30 seconds, just getting over these little bumps. Then the sorting hat, you know, I was doing 400 watts for 5 minutes and watching hundreds of riders accelerate ahead of me. I found myself in a group with the leading women, including Heather Jackson, who went on to win, Whitney Allison, who's always a contender. She's won BWR Utah. She puts on her own event with her husband, Zach Allison, Foco Fondo. Always honored to ride with the likes of these folks. Paige Onweller, who is just coming from 3 days of Redlands, the road stage race here in California. She did 3 days of Redlands as a warm-up of sorts. Pros are on a different level. She finished third on the day and was disappointed. Again, speaking to her ability and ambition. Mix of terrain, mix of riders. Heather Jackson's many years a high-level pro triathlete. Flavia Oliveira, who finished second. Racer from back in the day, been to the Olympics. So it's fun to see how these different athletes come together and how they fare on the gravel. There are a few places where the course doubled back on itself. So early on, you could see huge groups going past. It was like being on Zwift on a Saturday in the winter, but with, you know, cars on the road and a little bit of gravel. The group I was in with the leading women was the third big group on the road. I was pretty happy with that position leading into the first bit of single track, and that single track proved to be another sorting hat of sorts, as my group was big when it went in and then came out in multiple groups.
Oh yeah.
Change the location, trying to get out of the wind and away from that freeway noise. So the bike, Canyon Grail CF SL 8, 3,200 bucks, which, as far as gravel bikes go these days, is a great deal. It's crazy how much gravel bikes can cost. It comes with GRX mechanical 2x. The post is what I think gravel suspension should be. The handlebar is a fitter's nightmare. And if the bike happens to fit you, which as dumb luck would have it, it fits me pretty well, then this can be a very good bike at an exceptional price. If the bike does not fit you, you are SOL, which is a funny situation to be in for a bike that is consumer direct, because it raises the question, well, how do you know if it fits you or not? Usually the answer is you go to your local shop, you get on the thing and see if it fits, and if it doesn't, you get a different stem to make it longer or shorter, or you raise or lower said stem. Here, all you can do is lower it by 15 mil, which is a teeny amount. If you want to go up, if you want a different bar stem concoction, that's not something you can even find on the Canyon website. So it's quite a situation on the front of the bike. Another thing that surprised me about the fit of the cockpit had nothing to do with the bars, but the group itself. If you've watched my videos, you know I'm a huge fan of Shimano's GRX Di2 for a few reasons. And one I realized coming back to mechanical is simply how the things feel in your hands. My buddy Frank likes to answer the question, what's the best bike, by saying, it doesn't matter, man, it's just all about the components. He's not entirely correct, but he's not entirely wrong. Components are important. Certainly the level of the things, top to bottom, but also how they feel in your hands, because that is a vital touch point. I took a few measurements at my house before I came out here, looking at how the circumference of these hoods compare to GRX Di2, and also to how they compare to the old SRAM Force and the new SRAM Force. And I measured the circumference, here and here. Got to get my notes because my brain is bad. This guy goes from like 13 up here to 15 millimeters. Compare that to 12 at the skinniest point and 14 millimeters on GRX Di2. Same measurements as the new SRAM Force. The old SRAM Force was like 13 at the narrowest and 14 at the widest. Another dimension is how much room you've got between the bar and the back of the lever, which is a little bit smaller on the mechanical. It was like 15 mil compared to 16 mil on GRX Di2, which is more than the new SRAM Force. So one benefit to going from mechanical to Di2, and I know like some of you old or not so old curmudgeons will have different opinions on this, but by taking out the mechanical bits, you've just got smaller stuff inside, which allows for a narrower diameter, which for me feels good. I've got like large, extra large glove sized hands, and I like having a smaller hood to grab onto and a little more reach in there. So function wise, GRX mechanical is solid, but I miss the feel, the literal feel and shape of the GRX Di2 hoods. This video is supported by Stages Cycling, which makes power meters where I live in Boulder, Colorado. You can get stock power meters on the left crank, on the right crank, or dual-sided meters. Also, you can send in your own Shimano crank, and they will do a factory install and have you up and riding with power in a matter of weeks. If you'd like to save 20% on a Stages power meter, just use the code THERIDE at stagescycling.com. I like using Stages meters on test bikes because it's easy to pop on a left crank, and I use a Stages left-sided meter on my personal road bike at home. Sun's back out. This feels good. It was nice today in that the sun was not out for most of the time, and instead there was a misty, overcast vibe for most of the day, which was good because I was overheating trying to drag my carcass up these hills. These races are so long, they ebb and flow, and the groups you're with ebb and flow, or at least that's been my experience at these races. Sometimes you find yourself in a huge group, sometimes you find yourself in an event with 4,000 people all by yourself. You're like, how am I not getting a draft in an event with 4,000 people. I've been playing bikes for 2 decades plus, and I've been dropped by all sorts of people. Today, I got dropped by a baby. That was the first.
Speaking of big babies,
right here.
how you doing?
I am suffering like a stuck pig.
We just got dropped by a baby
We're getting
on the
dropped
back of
by
an
Whitney
e-bike.
now.
Oh, Whitney, I thought you were ahead. Man, 40 miles in, I'm already dizzy. I can't figure out which way's up. Look at the size of that lens. That is intimidating.
Can you get my nostril?
Doesn't bode well. Doesn't bode well for the big babies.
Okay, so I didn't get dropped by a baby. There was a father with his small child on the back of an e-bike who came zipping up on past us on one paved climb. So for tires, fast folks, we're going with a 32. Last year, the late great Mariah Wilson was on 32 slicks, Specialized Mondos. She was here to win. She won by 25 minutes over second place, Flavio Oliveira, who again was second place this year. Alexi here in the parking lot yesterday was, when I asked the question, what's the tire? He said, well, you trying to win or you trying to have fun? I'm like, come on, man, what kind of question is that? You think I'm trying to beat you guys? Here to have fun, but also, of course, we want to go fast, right? So the 35 to 40 was his advice, with a foul tread in the middle and a little shoulder bite on the side, which is exactly what these Schwalbe G-One RSs are. I was happy to have some bite on the side, navigating the single track bits. It's been raining out here, so it was a little tacky, so that was nice. Alex Howes, longtime former World Tour racer guy, he's got it in his head that shoulder knobs affect the aerodynamics of a tire, which is true. It's just fundamentally true. You put the things in a wind tunnel and they will be slower than a slick tire. For me, a 46-year-old who weighs 185 pounds and is just kind of flubbing along out here, the aerodynamics of a tire are, I don't want to say the least of my concerns, but they're way, way down the list. Have enough traction so I'm not crashing myself, that's a little bit higher on the list. So to each their own, and for me, I again am pleased as punch with these Schwalbe tires. I appreciate levers that are integrated into the axle. Sure, you can save a couple grams, and Alex Howes could save a fraction of a watt in CDA by having just the Allen key removal, but these work. I like them. Let's talk wheels. Forge+Bond, 1,500 gram wheel set, $2,600. I popped these on to replace the stock DT Swiss G1800 wheels, which are alloy wheel set that cost $250. So 2,600 bucks versus $250, and the weight difference, these things weigh 1,500 grams. Those DT Swiss wheels, being metal, weigh 1,895 grams. So how do they feel? Well, one of the claims of these wheels, besides the fact that Forge+Bond can recycle or downcycle, some might say, the excess material into things like tire levers, is that the vibration damping, they claim, is greater than a traditional carbon fiber wheel made with epoxy. I was skeptical that I could feel such a thing in my first few rides around Boulder when I was doing, sat in on my buddy Chris Case's Alter Exploration guided tour for a couple of days. And I was like, I don't know if I can feel it. Maybe I'm just feeling the cushy tires. Maybe I'm feeling the flexy seat post on this Canyon. But after rattling around out here for 7 hours on some hard washboard, my hands feel fine. Is correlation causation? No. But I do think, just from my one-man non-scientific study, that there is something to their claim on vibration damping. Should you buy these wheels, not buy them? Honestly, I don't care what you do. I'm just here to give you my 2 cents and some context, so when you're looking around at what you're riding, what you could be riding, hopefully this is a little bit of helpful information. Let's talk about what worked, what didn't work. On the didn't work side, my chain and my brain both came up a little short today. Chain, not the chain itself, but the chain lube. I use Finish Line's ceramic wax, which is nice and quiet for a couple days until it gets soaking wet, I learned. And then it was squawking and screeching, making all kinds of noise, feeling like it was gonna seize up. So I pulled over and put on a little bit of chain lube that I had in the saddlebag. Lube time. Good Lord. Nice thing about getting drops is you can enjoy the view. On the brain fail, one was like not applying more lube this morning, and two was not, a couple things, not having my little thing of chain lube in the pockets on the bib shorts, something that I've told other people to do many times and something I failed to do myself. And then the other was check to see if said little bottle of lube actually had plenty of lube in it. I put on a little bit and the thing was done. One more forehead slapper. So I like easy. My buddy Benjamin Sharp is a meticulous person. This guy is a coach to Olympic champions, among other people. He will take his chain off, do the 14-step cleaning process, put it in the chain spa to apply the wax, and I'm sure his chains run well and are faster than mine. I can't be bothered. I like the Pro Gold lube. This isn't a wax lube, but this is a kind of shampoo and conditioner all in one thing, and it's a degreaser and a wax. I like that because it's easy and saves some steps. A similar product, which is two products for wax, is what the folks at Ally down in Arkansas designed with the University of Arkansas folks, where there's a bottle of degreaser that has the approval of Big Tall Wayne Smith, the mechanic who works for Canyon, and Pete Stetna and other folks. When I saw he was using that and approved of it, I felt better about my choice. And then Ally also has a drip-on wax. You don't have to put in a crock pot, and that works pretty well. I ran out of that stuff and was using some Finish Line that I had. Would the Allied wax have lasted longer as we were going through, water crossing after water crossing and mud mixed with cow manure crossing after mud mixed with cow manure crossing? I don't know, maybe. I guess I'll have to come back and try it again next year. But my take on that Finish Line stuff was meh. My take on me not having more lube at the ready, also meh. Speaking of Big Tall Wayne, I went to visit him yesterday in what has become an annual tradition of Ben Delaney showing up hat in hand, ask for pro help from Wayne Smith and Merv Davis, another pro mechanic who works for Canyon. Last year I showed up with a Di2 12-speed bike that I had taken apart at my house, built in the hotel here, and couldn't get it to shift. And I thought, oh, is the battery dead? No, it turns out you need two wires to connect to the battery in the seat post, not just the one. Anyhow, I revisited them this time because I brought two feedback tools to assemble the bike in the hotel. The pedal wrench and a cool little multi-tool that also has a 5 Newton meter torque wrench built in. I neglected to bring the third tool, the lock ring tool. So I had carefully taken off my rotors, put them in cardboard, got here and like, oh, forehead slapper. So I went over and got the help of those boys. All that to say, big high five for pro mechanics. Without them, we, or at least I, would be a hot mess. Big high five for all the volunteers who help put on events like BWR California. In addition to the slew of sheriffs and state patrol and other law enforcement who are out there, there were dozens, if not 100 plus volunteers out there. So back to the bike race. Speaking of volunteers staffing the aid stations, there's an aid station like every 20 miles here at BWR, which is awesome. And early on, not only can you stop and refill your bottles and grab all sorts of food, you can often get a hand up of a cold bottle if you are coming through in some of the earlier groups. So that is something I very much appreciate, and that's why I opted not to go with my U-Sweep pack. because you don't necessarily have to stop early on. I did stop a few times, including at mile, I don't know, around 80 or so. Pounded a Coke, as did Greg, who I was riding with, and a matter of miles later, both of us were cramping. Whether that had something to do with pounding a Coke or not, I don't know, but that was a funny thing, and thanks to the group I was riding with for letting us two cramping old men just sit at the back for a little while until we got our act together. Along with the ebb and flow of groups, the ebb and flow of feeling is definitely a thing. I was feeling good early on, I was feeling sorry for myself as I was cramping and having stomach issues in the middle, but then, you know, rallied, came back around, enjoyed railing a descent behind a couple of talented riders, including a kid who had a "Junior!" exclamation point sticker on his helmet. Scared me a little bit, but that was fun to ride behind you guys on that one. In the closing chapters of the race, you hit a long climb Quest Haven, which we had come down earlier in the day. Again, big batch of volunteers were out cheering people on. Ground up that ground. Yeah, it's past tense of grind. I ground up the ground very slowly. And then at mile, 120 or so, come to Double Peak, which again is just pure Michael Marks mayhem of throwing in a 20% climb once you're hours and hours deep and already well fatigued. All right, who would we have here on the back of the helmet?
Simon the Sloth.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Okay. Okay, so mile 120, 7 hours in. What does Mike Marks serve up? 20% climb. 20. Not friendly. Not friendly at all. Coming up to the top here. Thanks for being out here.
You got
From there, it was a screaming descent down said 20% gradient. Jumping onto some single track where some volunteers were very helpfully pointing out some of the sketchier, tight corners. Thanks, sir. Appreciate you being out here. Then a ripping road descent back down here to San Marcos. Across the finish line, the party is back on. Everybody gets to share their tales of joy and woe, have some good food, and get some beverages in their system. I enjoyed meeting many of you out here, both in the days leading up to the event, during the event, and after the event, and I appreciate your support. Right now, I'm going to get out of this stinking kit, take a shower, put this bike back in the bike bag, and head on back to Boulder, Colorado. Thank you for watching. I thank you for subscribing. And when I see you out there next, you tell me. Enjoy the ride. Jeremy towed me around all day.
It was a pleasure.
What's the most important thing when you're doing a bike ride?
Oh, you know it. Enjoy the ride.
Oh, hello? Hello? Oh, you were 9th place and you rode the last 30 miles with your saddle broken. Huh. Oh, okay, I broke it at the finish line, but it was like this the whole time, and so I had to not push it not to break it, but...
This is some legit jungle cross. Yep. Don't fall down. Speed plays. Oh. It's bold, Jack. Bold move.